Welcome everyone to a very exciting episode of the Scruffy Stuff. We have Adeem the Artist here live at the KnoxNews office today. They're going to kick things off with a song, so whenever you're ready, Adeem, you can take it away.
Started out as a light in my father's eye at a Texaco. Mama was working overnights on Sam Wilson Road. She was a madcap teenager runaway. A year past graduation, she was new in town and he was burning down. Place with infatuation, she fired a red hot and buckshot distress calls across the parking lot. A rebel reeling from the feeling of rooting around for a little repose. They chased sunrise, moonshine after tussling and muttering secrets all night. Started out as a light in Carolina. Started out as a light in Carolina. I started out as a light in mother's eye many years ago. In the numbing fires of live wires, loose in foster homes. From my granddad's grip to my mother's lip, there's an ancestral impression, an American inheritance. Trauma and depression, she fired a red hot buckshot distress calls across the parking lot. A rebel reeling from the feeling of rooting around for a little repose. They chase sunrise with moonshine after tussling and muttering secrets all night. Started out as a light in Carolina. I started out as a light in Carolina. From the birth canal, from the whistle of emergency sirens, you've got a lot of skins to wear as you try to figure out who you are. It don't matter what people say, don't expect them to understand. Ain't nobody someone else's mistake. Life is not always the things you plan. Some of us have childhoods that aren't poems on sight. But darling, you're doing all right.
It's weird, though.
All right, I'm back.
You all should be on the other.
No, I really appreciate you joining us. We've been doing this podcast, I guess, for 3 years, and you were one of the first ever episodes that we had. I don't know if you realized that, but it was back when you were doing the crafty bastard singing beer deliveries.
Yeah.
I think the podcast and Adeem the Artist have both come a long way since then. But it's been crazy to watch, just the success and the growth over the past few months that you've seen. And haven't asked about COVID-19 in a long time to an artist, but it seemed like to me, I mean, around that time when we were talking before, it was really when your music was really starting to take off and resonate with people, and a lot of people were, finding creative ways to get things done, like singing beer deliveries, and sort of your persona that you had on Instagram. It's not a persona, you being yourself on Instagram and talking directly with people and doing these live and virtual shows. I guess just can you talk a little bit about just the complexity of that timing, where it seems like you're really starting, like I said, to resonate with people, and then everything gets shut down. What was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, me and my wife, Hannah, High Five Hanny, she's an artist in town, and I don't know, we're both just scrappy artist types. That's why we came to Knoxville. It was cheap living. So it's like, I don't know, when you have a creative mind and clinical depression, which are a couple things we have, then day jobs aren't always the best situation to be in. The entire atmosphere was not great for us in any of the work environments that we were in. So we were kind of used to, like, I can't work here anymore, so we're going to have to rough it for a while. Let's find creative ways to peddle our craft. So I think the pandemic was just kind of like, I don't know, we had been practicing for that for years, so it just became like, all right, cool, it's time to get whimsical and figure out how we're going to survive this thing. From a financial standpoint, from a health standpoint, we were bleaching our groceries and doing.
Well, I was going to say, talking about some of those creative things, not the bleaching your groceries, but the just the singing beer deliveries, right? And I keep bringing that one up, but there was so much. I mean, the pandemic happens, you come out with Pandemic Days. The Tiger situation here in Knoxville comes out, you come out with the Tiger King.
Oh, that was the
Tiger Prince.
Yeah, the
not
Tiger
Prince.
King.
But I mean, and then just thinking about this new album, right? Am I correct in saying that this was partially a crowdfunded album?
Yeah,
too,
it
right?
was fully crowdfunded.
And so I wanted to ask about that too, because I think there's been a belief for a long time that if you wanted to make it in music in Knoxville, it might mean making that move over to Nashville, and that maybe in Knoxville it's hard to get things done. But you found a unique way to do that and make it happen while living here. I'm wondering just your thoughts on that belief that I've heard before, and just really about sort of how this organically came together. And how, I mean, just sort of the outside of the box ways that you thought about getting this album done.
I don't know. That's a good question. I haven't thought a lot about. I mean, I don't give a lot of credence to the you have to move to Nashville to succeed thing. But it is true. There are a lot of natural obstacles, I think, to doing music in Knoxville. We are a football town. We are a sports-oriented community. The music scene is vibrant. There are a lot of great players here. There are a lot of great listeners here. But socially, I think the community of listeners in Knoxville is built around sort of social events with music as a background situation. That's how I made most of my money here. Before the pandemic was kind of being the brown-eyed girl player at the brewery.
I was gonna say, I think whenever we talked last time, it was the Captain
Redbeard,
right?
Yeah.
A little throwback, yeah. Well, and I'm curious about the writing process on this album too, because that song you just played, I think I've told you before, is one of my favorite songs, and I think I first heard it going back to pandemic times, the Second Bell Sofa Soiree. I heard that song for the first time, and then this album's released, and I listened to it, and the opening song is Carolina, a new version of it, but the song that I was already familiar with. And I'm curious about the writing process of this new album, if this was something that was in the works for a long time, or if this was something, hey, I'm going to sit down with this, and make a crowdfunded album today, or how much of it was, just, I don't want to say borrowed material, it's all your material, but how much of it was already written before you went into that writing and recording process?
Yeah, that's a great question. This was the album I've been working on for a while, before the pandemic happened, for sure. I think probably a little over half the record was written at that point, and I really didn't believe that I had what I needed to actualize it in the way that it needed to be actualized. I imagined what I wanted the record to be, and I knew that I couldn't do it independently, because I do a lot of my own recording. So Cast Iron Pansexual was an absolute surprise success to me. I had no ambition. I wasn't even going to release it until a couple weeks before it came out.
Really? Why not?
It was for Patreon supporters. It was like a special thing for people who followed me on there.
Oh, okay.
And so I was just going to give it to them, and then I gave it to a few of them, and they were like, "This is really good. You should put it out." So I released it, and then we got lucky. Toby Keith did something dumb. I don't know. He got some kind of medal from the president that a lot of people didn't like,
right?
And and so it became a good time to release the Toby Keith song just by accident.
Yeah.
And then BJ Barham from American Aquarium heard that, so things started kind of moving as far as tour dates and stuff for me, and that was nice. But I've been reading. There's this artist. Her name's Karen Pittleman. She got a band called Karen and the Sorrows. It's incredible. Really, really lovely. And she wrote this. She's written a series of essays, but there's one in particular about the culture of country music that really, really moved me, where she talked a lot about the stories that get told, the stories that don't get told, the narratives that are perpetuated, what it says about the culture. Because, a lot of people who don't live in and of the American South, it's very easy to distill it to a very myopic view of the type of person that lives here, but we're actually a very vibrant and culturally diverse collective of folks, And so I really wanted to spend time on music that unpacked some of the things that brought me to where I am. And so I took some of those songs that have been weighting this record that was largely about deconstructing my childhood, my Southern identity, the ways that it affected me for the positive and the negative, and then kind of had these topics I wanted to cover that just rolled out. So it came out, I think we had 13 songs for the record and whittled it down to 11. There were 2 that they said, these are just 2 of the same song.
Right.
They're both good though.
Well, I would love to hear another one, either something off the new album, Brown Eyed Girl, whatever it is that you would want to play.
I'll do Brown Eyed Girl.
But if you want to take it away, we'd love to hear another one.
Me and Judas down on 6th and Lowry, outside a cafe when the moonlight fell. Cast itself down, pouring out on a city. What a pity when something so beautiful wastes itself. I took a pull from my wood pipe as the taxi cabs drove by, full of college-age women in drag. Yeah, they're all wearing costumes and they all look like children, and they're blowing us kisses as they pass. I wondered what in the hell this world could compel any creature to smile on a pair like we were. He had short, neat curls that were shadow black, and I was fumbling around with the weather app, wondering if he could ever love me back. Sometimes these things are hit or miss. With the perfume trail lingering behind, I caught an urge and the nerve to take his hand in mine. And if it didn't rain at the perfect time, it's probable we wouldn't have kissed. In the Northeast Minneapolis Arts District. He whispered, I'm not the kind to lie about leaving, with me clinging so tight to his chest. In a notebook on the rough-hewn walnut stand by his mattress, scrawled out ultimatums, first of men. And then I never called anyone, kept it quiet, inspired by the urgency of the love we shared. Some of our friends say I'm still alive, and others don't believe I was ever really anywhere. I gave my body and blood the power of love, hope that I would conquer sin, but I never even rose again. He had short and neat curls that were shadow black, and I was fumbling around with the weather app, wondering if he could ever love me back. Sometimes these things are hit or miss. With the perfume trail lingering behind, I caught an urge and the nerve to take his hand in mine. And if it didn't rain at the perfect time, it's probable we wouldn't have kissed. In the Northeast Minneapolis Arts District. Then in the light of a wasteful moon so familiar, sold me out for some pieces of silver. Still I love the feel of your lips, and I never wanted more than this. To kiss you in public, to openly say that I loved it. I write this down for Judas. Oh, all of this was for Judas. It's
got kind of a slow fade. Almost there.
That's great. So I wanted to ask you, you know, not a lot, but some musicians out there, and I'm talking people that are just aspiring to be a professional musician, want to see music as a career. Some people want to take it a step further and want to have the fame and fortune that comes with being a musician, and some people just are fine playing at home or whipping out a guitar around a campfire, even though nobody wants them to, kind of like me. But the question I have is, it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've been doing this meaning singing, songwriting for more than 2 decades, right? I mean, how long has it been, would you say?
Yeah, pretty close. My first EP came out in 2004, so we're getting close.
So the big question I have is sort of why now? Because it seems like there has been, an appreciation and a recognition that you haven't received before for your work, and I'm curious if it's something that you particularly or personally did to try to take it that step further. If it was just right people at the right time heard it. I know you said American Aquarium, heard that song that you released, or was it some sort of combination of the both? I guess why is 2022, would you say, has been such a big year for Adeem the Artist?
I got really lucky, man. I mean, I joke and say I finally did a good one, you know, but there's some truth in that too. I mean, it's an album that took me, probably 6-7 years to write altogether, to get it what it is. We made a lot of decisions. There's a lot of mechanisms in the industry that are as simple as hiring a publicist and hiring a radio campaign and hiring people to do different things and having those connections. So there were probably like 50 decisions that I made for this album, and I could go through them, but the truth is, with anything that you do, it's always a little bit of a crapshoot. If the president had gotten assassinated on December 2nd, I don't know the White Trash Revelry would have made a splash at all. You know what I mean? You're at the mercy of so many different factors, and so I think in a lot of ways, it's a moment where there's a lot of work that needs to be done within the culture of country music that a lot of people are paying attention to for the first time. And I'm addressing a lot of those issues. I'm addressing a lot of that work. I would say in a way that is not patronizing. I didn't make a record to paint myself as one of the woke whites who's going to save the country or anything like that. I made a record to try and, as compassionately as possible, like really reflect on, like, all right, where have I come from? Racism's an issue that I tackle on this record a lot, and my feelings about it are very much that racism is not a thing that you get beyond as a white person in America and suddenly like championed, and now you're one of the good people. It's really sewn into the fabric of our culture and our society, in ways that many of us don't even recognize, and that's why we take umbrage with the accusation that we're doing or perpetuating racism. I think that one thing that's really important to me is to strip away the facade. I'm a feminist. That's important to me, but I am a feminist because I was a misogynist for a long time. I was socialized to inhabit misogyny. That's another part of our culture, and so very much my way of exploring these topics is less like I used to be just like you, a bad person, and now I'm a good person, which is regularly used to talk about these things. Right. My angle is more like I'm just a person doing the best they can, and if we can strip away the baggage of racism and wokeness and those terms as like weapons to be used against people, and instead just be like, look, I'm just doing my best, but I learned some stuff. Yeah. And this is what I've learned, and this is how I've applied it. And that to me was really important, because I think whenever you become privy to gross injustices, especially, I grew up in North Carolina. Like I didn't believe racism existed anymore. I didn't believe, I didn't think a lot of these topics mattered. And to find out about layers and layers of injustice that happen in the world, it can be overwhelming. It paralyzed me for years. I felt so overwhelmed by the direness of it. And it sounds counterintuitive, but a part of it, I think, was becoming numb to the reality of just like, yeah, this is how it is, this is how things are, and the only way that we get to move forward is to, rather than be paralyzed by the sense of guilt and wonder that this injustice is still happening, to integrate what you've learned, and try to do a little bit wherever you can to make it better, and I don't always do that, but I'm trying,
Yeah. And so is talking about these things in your music, whether it be race or gender or whatever issue is going on that you feel called to talk about through music, is the calling more about wanting to get that message out there and speak on it, or is it just through the storytelling process of writing a song you feel called to these things to just talk about them personally? I mean, because you hear a lot, about artists and athletes, the criticism that, stick to what you do and, shouldn't speak on these, don't speak on these issues. We want to watch you play guitar or play basketball or whatever it might be.
Right.
But do you feel called specifically to speak on behalf of these things, or is it just naturally sort of taking your experiences of what you've gone through and they find their way into songs?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm not a guitarist.
Right.
I'm sort of a makeshift anthropologist, and that's what a lot of storytellers are. We study human beings, we study people and try to understand them. I think that the stuff that makes me mad is what you're talking about here. It's when people on the right or the left, whatever their political affiliation is, try to ham-fistedly shove a political message into a song. I don't want to be preached at. I don't want to be told what to believe or what's right or what's wrong. I don't want, I have plenty of family members I can hang out with on the holidays on both sides of the aisle that can tell me what to think about things. So for me, like if I feel drawn to talk about racism like I did with this song Heritage of Arrogance, that song is not talking about racism. That song is talking about my life. I grew up on a street lined with Confederate flags. That is where I grew up. I went to a church full of all white people. There was not a person in my church that wasn't white. These are just facts. That's just my life.
Right.
So the fact that those images play into this greater narrative of exposing racism in the sort of like nefarious ways that it becomes sewn into our culture, is really just storytelling.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you, I set out to write a song about abortion rights a few years ago, because abortion's a thing that matters to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been a vocal champion of both sides of the abortion debate in my time as a conservative Christian musician and up to now. And I wrote this song about I went to a Planned Parenthood and there were some people protesting. I had to get an STD test. That's why I was at the Planned Parenthood. But there was this teenage girl in there, and she was early on in her pregnancy, and I was just thinking about what a awful thing to have to walk past all these people spewing this nasty stuff. That's disgusting. That's abhorrent. Why would you do that? And I started writing this song about a teenager going to Planned Parenthood trying to navigate, and she keeps the baby in the song. and I wasn't trying to write a pro-life song, you know what I mean? But sometimes when you channel the ghosts, you got to listen to them. And this teenager wanted to have the baby, and I think that's the power of it. It's like, it's not, none of this is about telling people what to do or how to live. It's about giving people the freedom to make the choices that they need to make to pursue their highest self, Anyway, I don't know.
Well, I do want to talk about sort of your personal journey as well, because obviously a lot has changed in recent months in your life, I imagine, and I want to get to some of that in a bit. But as far as like big life announcements, I guess, since I've known you, I know one thing that has been a change is you publicly began sharing about being non-binary and pansexuality. And I'm just curious, as somebody who's you're out there in the public, you're telling people about this, they can hear it in your songs, but the music that you're writing is sort of synonymous with the South. And I know we talked about stereotypes earlier, right? And that the South is a melting pot of all kinds of people, but stereotypically the South is synonymous with not always being accepting of things like gender. And I'm just curious sort of how that was received, both, being somebody in the South, but also being somebody in writing music in a genre that's associated with the South, and also just personally, both how that journey was for you as far as sharing that, but also, like I said, the other side of how that was received, either from fans or just, people here in Knoxville. We're in Knoxville. A lot of people know you. How did that all play out?
Sure. I came out during the pandemic. It was easier that way, I think, to be in that position. I don't think that I had the time to step away from Captain Redbeard, to step away from all the, and I think a lot of people felt this. You step away from the office and you can take off this mask that you have to wear to the office every day.
Right.
I think some people have a more or less of a mask but to some extent you have these relationships that you're nurturing that you might not have chosen to spend time with these folks if you had the choice, you know what I mean? And you guys know. But I think having that space to not have to perform in any way really helped me to step back and really analyze the way gender informed the way that I communicated with people. As far as I got a lot of really supportive messages. A lot of folks in town were really, really kind to me. A lot of folks went out of their way, people in the scene here, to write me that didn't have to tell me that they supported me and appreciated me and stood behind me. It meant a lot. Online there's been, just casual bigotry lobbed in my way, but most of it's by anonymous strangers. It doesn't mean anything. They just see what they've prescribed as a man in lipstick, and they know how to respond to that, and that's all that is. I did have, I played a festival in Farragut and things went really bad.
What happened there? If you want to talk about it.
Yeah, they cut my set short. The people who run the festival cut my set short. And I didn't know. I just thought we were kind of off schedule or whatever, and talked to the band after me, and they were like, yeah, we had to start 15 minutes early. It was really weird tonight. And I was like, you shouldn't be starting early if I had to end early. And then by the time I left, my phone was blown up with all this, people in Farragut freaked out and said that I was teaching children about gay sex, and it was just absolutely obscene. And so I reached out to the people who did the event and asked them if they cut my set short in response to these types of complaints. I didn't hear from them for almost a full day. So I made a statement about it and said, hey, waiting to find out why my set was cut short, because this is pretty messed up.
Right.
They said, yeah, that they did. They were good friends of mine. They never issued an apology. Told me privately they would and never did. And then, people wrote and asked, for an explanation. And I saw the screenshots where they told people that I was talking about illicit sex in front of children. It's totally untrue. I would never do this. It was a really, really profound personal attack that has made Knoxville feel like it will never be my home again. I will definitely move away from this town feeling like this can't be my hometown because of this event. And it's been really, really tough. It's been really tough.
I guess we're seeing something sort of similar now with the drag shows in Knoxville and the response people have had over that and in relation to children being in attendance. So
and all of it is political banter that doesn't mean anything. All of this, even abortion at the end of the day, most of these people don't really care about abortion that are putting forth this legislation and handling these things down. This is coming from a place of how can we isolate demographics to force their hand in voting for our politicians. That's all any of this is. And you'll note that, this recent protest happened right after the midterms, and there's been no mention of any of this stuff. So the only people that are showing up to protest are the people who are too dumb to know that they're being used as a pawn in this political scheme. Because nobody else, doesn't matter. The elections, and then it just goes away on the media stage. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so it's you know, it's frustrating. It's frustrating because it riles people up and it does real damage to families. It does real damage. There are kids in Tennessee that are never, you know, I'm not going to hear these Farragut parents saying that it's fair. I will tell you, I did stumble on the city council video of the Farragut town hall where they're talking about me, and they were incredibly hateful. It was disgusting. I wish I hadn't found it. I googled Adeem the Artist, run this town, and this came up, and I was like, crap. Yeah, I mean, you know, it truly is like I want to say this because it's really important. Rolling Stone called my album one of the best albums of the year. Like my actualization is totally unimpeded by people's like thoughts about my gender. I don't care. It does not matter to me. I spent my months sending over 400 records out from my home office.
Right.
I feel fine. Like, I'm not going to hear people disparage me. I'm not going to hear people disparage my gender. I'm not going to hear people disparage any of the facets of my identity. But these kids who, like me, don't have a language for their own identity, for their own sexuality, for their own gender, but are feeling estranged from the gender or sexuality that they've been socialized to inhabit, are going to hear that stuff. And it's kind of stuff that you can lose your relationship with your kids. And that's like it. That's what we got. That's our legacy. That's how we affect the future. It's that relationship with our kids. And if your kids have any semblance of like identity that's not absolutely in line with you, and they hear those things that you're saying about me, that's really going to affect them, their psychology, and your relationship with them. That matters to me. Not because like I need CD sales from people in Tennessee,
right,
but because this place matters to me. These mountains matter to me. This land matters to me. The people here matter to me. The ones that call me names and show up in city council and disparage me, they matter. They're people, you know? And to me, it's very frustrating, you know, when people say things like, I don't agree with your lifestyle, but I'm glad you're doing it. And it's like, you go to church every Sunday, to a conservative Christian church that preaches against my entire identity. You let your kids go to a Sunday school with a stranger who tells them that because of their guilty conscience at their young age, God had to kill his only son in brutal, brutal, destructive ways to cover your kids' sins. I think that is messed up. I think it's wrong to do. And I would never say that. I would never say to a Christian in Market Square who I know is on their way to church, you look really lovely today even though I disagree with your lifestyle. It's just disrespectful. Why would you do that? They don't have to know that I disagree with their lifestyle. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And I think it's really, really important right now. And I say this as somebody who is a member of the transgender community, as a non-binary person, as a queer person, as somebody who was raised Christian and promised to God before I could speak. I think that learning how to occupy shared space in ways that honors each other is really, really important if we're going to survive all these disparate realities.
Yeah. And I think it's an overused expression, but in a way, music does have a way of bringing people together with things like this.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah?
I hope so.
That was my segue into another song.
That's good.
Yeah, I'd love to hear another one.
Daddy's gonna buy me a brand new gun, show me how to clean it in the yard. And Papa says he can't wait to see me fire with that steady arm. A couple hours of waiting and some heavy concentration put a bullet through the middle of a heart. Everybody's gonna be so glad to see the freezer full of fresh deer meat. Mama's gonna be so proud of me. when we get back to the farm. Nights get longer, days get hard. I learned to put a bullet through the middle of a heart. Carlene asked if she could marry me, driving around in Daddy's car, and gave her my graduation ring down by the lumber yard. Felt the violent hit of her passionate kiss like a bullet through the middle of a heart. Everybody's gonna be so glad to see her wearing that dress at our wedding. Mama's gonna be so proud of me, spinning around with steel guitar. Nights get longer, days stay hard. It hits like a bullet through the middle of a heart. Daddy paid his service till his time was due. His buddy recruits these days. Says I could make my country proud and get my education paid. Face them fears, make it 3 years, and brother, you'll have it made. Everybody's gonna be so glad to see me wearing that robe with my degree. Mama's gonna be so proud of me. God bless the USA. Nights get longer, and days get hard. I learned to put a bullet through the middle of a heart. I learned to put a bullet through the middle of a heart. Didn't have a grudge to bear to any of the people there, but I came home haunted by the lives my duty caused. Felt the barrel's tip against my rib, put a bullet through the middle of a heart. Everybody's gonna be so sad to see a flag disappear into the earth with me. Mama, do you think you still believe I'm gonna see the face of God? Nights get longer, the light goes dark. I've learned to put a bullet through the middle of a heart. I've learned to put a bullet through the middle of a heart.
It's good that I forget the words.
We all forget the words sometimes. I come up here without.
I said it was my least favorite. I don't know.
Well, you mentioned the Rolling Stone recognition for the most recent album. Obviously, it saw the feature in New York Times, Billboard, Brandi Carlile speaking about you, which had to be huge. I'm wondering just if you can describe how much life has changed for you since this recognition started pouring in. And is there any of those that were particularly shocking? I'm sure they were all. Came as at least a little bit of a surprise, but was there anyone that particularly stood out in your mind that was really special to you?
I mean, it's tough. The Brandi Carlile one came before any of the other ones, I think, and that was, I got like a notification on the social media that she had added me to something. I thought it was a playlist or something. I was like, oh, cool, this is awesome. And so I went to look for it, couldn't find it, and then I logged on Instagram and saw that it was an XM radio show. And so I went and got a subscription to XM radio and pulled it up as quickly as I could, and I pulled it up just in time to hear Brandy's wife say, "Adeem the Artist." And I was like, woo! Ah! That's exciting. And then I listened for about, a few minutes while I did the dishes, and then she said, "This next artist we want to talk about." And she said her quotes about me, and I screamed. I was like, "Ah!" Like, that can't be real. Honey, get in here. We got something weird going on. Yeah, that was really a big moment. And then, yeah, it's just been, it's been wild. It's been wild. I got to meet some folks who were like heroes to me and become pals. It's I mean, it got to the point by the end of the month where we were all just making jokes about, it turns out Adeem the Artist White Trash Revelry is on, the Colonel Sanders, shopping grocery list, just because it was on every list. Yeah. It's like, I mean, it sounds like I'm being humble, but I'm not. Like, we didn't think we were going to get any best year in this.
Yeah.
The album came out December 2nd.
Right.
It was like, well, maybe we'll get an honorable mention on stuff next year or whatever. So the first one of those was Billboard. It was a week after the record came out. We were like called one of the top 10 or 15 records or something. Mm-hmm. And it was like, holy crap, and then the Rolling Stone and everything. So by the time, I don't know, by the end of the month, we all became numb to it. Everybody on the team was just like, oh, looks like the Grammys mentioned us.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm just as far as like life change, I imagine you're doing a lot more of these, right? I mean, you're out probably talking and performing more. I mean, how is just the pace of life and just, it's DMs full. I mean, how
DMs are full. Social media got ruined for me a little bit. Yeah. It's a bummer. I tweeted out and said, what was your favorite song on White Trash Revelry? As kind of a bit. Like, I always do this, and then my friends just roast me,
Right.
But then it was like a bunch of people I didn't know telling me their favorite songs. And I was like, well, this isn't fun. What do you say to that? Like, oh, thanks. Like, that feels embarrassing. Like, I didn't mean to ask you to compliment my songs.
I did want to ask White Trash Revelry versus Redneck Revelry. That was what it initially was. Was there a reason behind the name change?
No, Redneck Fundraiser. For
Redneck
White
Fundraiser.
Trash.
Okay, sorry. That's my mistake.
The record was originally called, I might call another album now.
Okay, we'll save it for the next.
Keep it on the pocket. Yeah. But yeah, I like, we can't say white trash on most of social media. So we have to type WTR. They pull the post down like immediately.
And then of course the question I have to ask too is the obligatory what's next question. I mean, I saw for Knoxville listeners, it was big. I saw that you were added to the Big Ears lineup, which is exciting. With the Mountain Goats, who are playing, and I understand you're going on tour with too, right?
Yeah, I'm hitting
which
the road.
Which is crazy.
Doing
So
like
you
17 dates with them.
Wow. So you just want to talk about sort of what's next? I mean, it sounds like you said you're going to call another album something. So there's another album at some point. But what do you have planned?
I've got about 3 records cooking up. I don't know if they'll make it to public or if they'll be Patreon things. Right now it's riding the wave of the record, trying to get people to listen to it still, I've been doing stuff like this and talking to people on radio. And I mean, to be honest with you, my pace of life, I mean, part of it's just the timing. Like everything in the world shuts down like December 20th, and then it just opened up again like today, right. So like some people haven't even been in the office, so it's tough to say how much my life has really changed because I've been taking it pretty easy. I haven't been doing it. I got told that I had to come here today, and I was like, I gotta leave the house today. But also, just today we announced Wayne Stock 2023. We haven't done it in a couple of years. But it's a benefit for J.C. Hahn, who's a local musician who's incredibly talented. A bunch of incredible bands are going to be there. It's $5 per night, 3 nights, I believe, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And I'm going to be playing Friday night, maybe Saturday night.
They usually do that at the Relics. Is that where it's at?
It's at the Relics, okay. Down in Happy Holler. And it's going to be great. It's only $5. Way too much talent for that price tag. It goes to a great cause. And
Well, we appreciate you coming in. You mentioned the album, trying to get people to listen to it. If people want to listen to it or people just want to generally keep up with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I'm on AdeemTheArtist.com and at Adeem the Artist on all my social media stuff. But that was a joke. I'm really glad to be here. I'm grateful that you asked me.
I know you are.
I appreciate the opportunity and getting to chat with you.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate it.
You're the only person that reached out to me to ask why Joe Biden was taking my music off Spotify.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah, I vaguely remember that. But it's coming back to me now. Well, I'm glad that did not happen, and I'm glad you are here. And thanks so much for hanging out, talking, playing some songs, and hopefully we can do it again soon.
Yeah, I would love that.
I appreciate it.